Chapter 5. Snow White hadn't been past the castle walls in years. In the beginning, right after her father left, she often went down and stood by the large castle gates, peering out at the road that led into the forest beyond. For hours she stood there, waiting for any sign of her father. She played hide-and-seek with the guards, drew pictures in the dirt with sticks, piled leaves that fell. The hours always passed pleasantly, but as the years wore on, and the queen took more and more control, the friendly guards were replaced with cold men who had little time for her or her games. And no matter how often she looked for him, her father never came. So Snow White stopped going to the gates. But now she found herself back again, staring up at the large metal gate that had been lowered in front of the wooden door to the castle. The portcullis was menacing at the best of times. Now it looked even worse, as the thieves' arms had been bound behind him, securing him to the metal bars while leaving his face in front open to the wind and cold. Despite the unpleasant circumstances, the thief seemed rather relaxed as Snow White approached, clutching a bag in her hand. He lifted an eyebrow as she quickly untied him from the metal gate, nervously looking around to make sure no one was watching. As he brought his hands in front of him and began rubbing them briskly, Snow White reached into the bag and pulled out a loaf of bread. She passed it to him. "It's not much, but..." Her voice trailed off as their fingers met. She felt a tingle where their skin touched. "Tell me what it's like out there," she said. When he began to speak, she lifted her eyes to meet his, eager to hear what he was going to say. "You should come and find out," he said. He waggled his eyebrows, and Snow White almost smiled. But then she shook her head. "I can't." "I saw you give it to the queen back there," the thief said. "You seem brave enough." "Brave?" At the word, her hand instinctively went to her necklace. She wanted to be brave. That was why she had gone outside in the first place. But was he right? Did she seem brave? She certainly didn't feel it. Suddenly, there was the unmistakable clanging of armor nearby. "The guards. You have to go. Run," Snow White said, pushing the bandit onto the path that led to the woods. He didn't wait. He began to run, but then he stopped. Turning, he looked back at her. "Thank you," he said so softly that she barely heard. But Snow White did hear. If this stranger were caught, though, it wouldn't matter that she had helped him. "Go," she said. With a nod, he turned and raced away. Snow White watched until she was sure he was safe. Then, with her heart lighter than it had been in years, she walked back toward the castle. The queen stood on the balcony outside her room and watched as Snow White dreamily walked toward the wishing well. She felt a fire in her belly as she observed the girl's smile and a rush of rage when Snow White turned and looked back into the forest. There was a brightness to her face, a lightness that made her glow, all because of that thief and magical promises of a place away from here. Fuming, the queen stormed to the mirror. Of late, she had been asking for its reassurance more and more. Despite the fact that the king was never coming back, she was certain of it. The villagers relied on her, and her alone, to survive. She had been feeling uneasy. While she did not dare voice her anxieties, the mirror always provided her comfort that things were as they should be. "Magic mirror on the wall," she began, staring at her reflection. "Who is the fairest of them all?" A voice echoed from somewhere beyond. "Famed is thy beauty, Majesty," it said. And then there was an explosion of green flame, and the phantom of the mirror appeared. It stared back at her, its pale face expressionless. The queen leaned in, waiting. This was when the mirror usually told her that she was the fairest of them all. But wait. Air left the queen's lungs and hissed. Her eyes narrowed, filling with a combination of suspicion and panic. The phantom went on. "A lovely maiden I now behold, awakened to the world. Nothing can hide her gentle grace, for I see. The queen's breathing became shallow as the words she had feared hearing for so long finally echoed through the chamber. She is more fair than thee, the phantom continued, lips red as the rose, hair black as ebony, pure as the driven. No! The queen's scream of rage echoed through her bedroom. There was no mistaking it. The mirror was talking about Snow White. She was the one whose beauty the phantom spoke of with reverence. Her big doe eyes and her frustratingly perfect unlined lips were what had dulled the queen's own beauty. Her blood boiling, the queen snarled at the treacherous mirror and then began to pace around the room. How dare the phantom betray her? Was Snow White beautiful? Perhaps, at least in the eyes of some, but she was nothing but a simpering little girl. The queen had more strength in her pinky than Snow White had in her entire prim and perfect little body. The queen stopped as an idea came to her. Snow White was perfect, and kind, and sweet. She would never be able to say no to people in need or pain. So perhaps the queen just needed to find a way to make Snow White feel bad for her. And then she would find her own way to get rid of the girl, once and for all. She spun on her heels, and her long black cape rustled like a raven's wings as she turned and strode out of the room. It didn't take her long to find Snow White. The girl hadn't gotten very far. She was kneeling on the grand staircase, polishing the steps. Her head was bowed, so the queen couldn't see her expression, but she was sure the insipid thing was smiling or humming to herself despite the chore. Snow White, the queen called, moving down the stairs. Her face was a picture of calm as she approached the girl. Your Majesty, Snow White said, dropping the sponge she had been holding. You startled me. If only I could startle you more, the queen thought, keeping a smile plastered to her face. There's something I forgot to say, she told the girl as she extended her arms toward her. Snow White tilted her head, swallowing back the bile that rose in her throat at the physical affection. The queen focused on driving home her misery. Blinking back tears, she went on. I share your pain, Snow White. We've both endured the king's absence for far too long. We have, Snow White said, nodding. She wiped a tear from her own eye. I've got you a little present, the queen said, forcing her voice to stay soft, heavy with emotion. For me? Snow White said, not bothering to hold back her shock. The queen nodded. Tomorrow the gates will open for you to pick your apples, and when you return, we will make pies together. Snow White's hands flew to her heart. Oh, she breathed, that's wonderful. The queen hooked Snow White's arm with her own. The huntsman will escort you from the palace to the orchards in the northern woods. It was the exact spot where she used to go with her parents. But I don't understand. What made you change your mind? Snow White said after a moment. The queen stopped. This was it, the moment she drove her plan home. Once she had Snow White's complete trust and the huntsman had his orders, she would be done with the girl. Oh, you did, Snow White, she said. I've lost all my joy, but you've shown me the way. With your kindness, your fairness, I look at you, and I just want to be the fairest of them all. With one more smile and a gentle squeeze of Snow White's shoulder, she turned and walked away. That, she thought as she passed a nervous maid, was the performance of a lifetime. Get her a new dress, she said to the startled maid, pointing towards Snow White, who watched her with warm eyes. The princess is going out. Her order given, she went to find the huntsman. He was the last part of the plan, and she needed him fully on board. Long shadows lay across the castle by the time the huntsman came to the queen's chambers. Outside, stars began to appear in the cloudless evening sky, and there was a feeling of serenity. But in her room, the mood was anything but tranquil. The queen had death on her mind. The huntsman entered the chamber, bowed, and then awaited his orders. The queen didn't waste time. Enough had already been wasted, and with every passing minute, Snow White became a greater threat. "Huntsman, take Snow White far into the forest," she began. She pointed a long talon-tipped finger at a map of the kingdom mounted on the nearby wall. "Find a secluded glade where she could pick apples." The huntsman's eyes narrowed. "Aye, Majesty," he said. "And there, my faithful huntsman." "Kill her." To her surprise, the huntsman looked shocked. What about her command surprises him? "But Majesty," he said, "she is just a girl." The queen pursed her lips, her cold eyes turning colder. She couldn't have the man feeling sympathy for the girl. She sighed. She had been hoping he would just say yes, but apparently his pesky moral values were getting in the way. She would have to fix that, make the task a necessary evil. "And I am your queen. It was Snow White who set the bandit free. She's plotting against me. Now tell me, are you against me too?" "Are you?" I, yes or no," the queen said, her voice echoing off the stone walls of the chamber. The huntsman slowly shook his head. "No, Majesty." She walked to her dressing table and picked up a wooden box. A delicate pattern was carved into the wood, and blue stone peeked out from underneath. It was rather lovely, save for the clasp, which was carved in the shape of a heart with a dagger through it. "Take her to the forest, kill her, cut out her heart, pop it in this box." She handed it over. As the huntsman took the box, the queen brushed a finger over his knuckles. "On your return, you will have anything your heart desires." Her orders given, her vague promise offered, she presented the huntsman with her back. She heard him turn, his boots clicking on the floor, and then the door closed. She allowed herself a small smile. After the next day, Snow White would no longer be a wrinkle in her plan to rule beautifully forever.